I'm gonna leave that alone. Okay, so this is, from my understanding, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about Agenda 23. So Agenda 23 is supposed to be a comprehensive plan adopted by the UN, right, in 2015, aiming to address the global challenges through 17 sustainable development goals. Okay, so the Agenda 2030 dealing with the liberals, right? It was passed in 2015. Like Barack Obama, one of his last things, that was like when he was going out. So in 2015, he proposed this. He went along with the UN. He didn't create this, but he was definitely a part of this. He wanted this. He was definitely for the 2030. Now, what it's saying is that they fear that this agenda implementation might lead to increased regulation and control by global institutions, potentially eroding the power of nation states and concentrating authority in the hands of few elites. So 2030, because it's a UN idea, and signing off on this would take away from the sovereignty of the United States. That's what they're saying. They're saying that you're giving away some of your powers to this agenda. You're signing off on it, allowing the UN to have more power. One of the primary concerns is the agenda's emphasis on climate action and environmental sustainability. So, right wing critics argue that these policies could lead to restrictive environmental regulation. So, when we're talking about these green policies, they say, oh, we got to have this green, but they're going to put regulation on you. They're going to regulate things, not just to like the company and corporations, but they're going to regulate things to you, to the people. And it says this might stifle the economic growth and encroach upon private property rights. So when we looked at that 2030 story in the beginning, they talked about how nobody owned anything. Understand, when they say private property is anything that you own. So it could be a house or it can be your laptop. So what happens is you won't own anything. You'll just be using everything. You won't have any property rights under 2030. They will also, and this is coming. They say in 2030, y'all. Like, come on. This is 5 years down the road. Okay, so we got to do something. It says they also worry that the push for renewable energy sources and a reduction of carbon emissions could result in job losses in traditional energy sectors such as coal, oil, and natural gas. So, of course, y'all, the oil companies are, going to be upset, right? Now, I'm not saying, me, like big oil company, they've been doing their thing for a long time. And I mean, we would love to see something else come into play, but the transition, this is where the Civil War gonna come. See, you understand something. The Civil War before, the first Civil War in the United States was dealing with resources before. We was dealing with property. How property was to be looked at. All these things were being dealt with during the Civil War. So when the Civil War happened, it wasn't just about slavery, but it was about property, which slaves were property, right? But it was bigger than just slaves because you had a certain system in the South versus the North. So now you got one group saying we want, this is where the future want to go, and this is where but the other the other group want the future to go another way. So I don't, like, to me, it's not much different than the Civil War that happened in the 1800s, because the South had a vision of the future and the North had a view of the future. Now, who was the North? Who were them? Back then, it was the Republicans who had a vision of industrialization, right? The Industrial Revolution. They was like, look, the future is this. And they was like, we're not going to have slaves, but we're going to have wage workers. So we're going to just switch it out. So what I'm saying is, the government is good of creating change, but it doesn't really benefit the people. like it's proposed to do, right? So let's keep looking at this. It says that another contentious aspect is to focus on social equality and inclusion. While these goals aim to reduce inequalities and promote gender equality, right wing perspectives often perceive them as a threat to traditional values and social structures. So, like our traditional values as people that live here in America, whether you're melanated or not, we have certain values or certain ways we've done things. These things are going to change. Now, what I mean by that is, are we talking about like moral roles, like the role of a father and a mother? Those gender roles are going to be destroyed. They're already eroded under liberal governorship. We already it's already eroding that, right? The Republicans are definitely always about uh, keeping traditional values in place. So this is not really far fetched from a Republican viewpoint. It says that, moreover, the push for global citizenship and collaboration is sometimes seen as an attempt to dilute national identities and cultural heritage, right? Fostering a homogenized global culture that prioritizes collective goals over individual aspirations. Very socialite, socialism, okay? So let's say Agenda 2030, adopted by the UN in 2015, outlines 17 sustainable developmental goals. So these are the goals. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at these 17 goals and we're going to translate them into what they're really saying. So they're saying no poverty. They don't want any poverty in 2030. So the goal is to eradicate poverty in the guise of implementing a global welfare state, leading to total economic dependence on a centralized global government and cryptocurrency. So, I mean, these things are not far fetched, right? Cryptocurrency is definitely something that is in the future, and it is definitely going to become a currency at some point, right? We already using electric money, e-money now, right? E-currency, right? So let's look at this. Zero hunger. Number two, there are claims that the goal to end hunger is a strategy to control the global food supply and force GMO on all populations. So, America is like the guinea pig, right? They already, like, most of their food is GMO now. And so what they're trying to do is say, okay, with zero hunger, hey, we can create all kind of food. We got Monsanto and whatever companies that are globally that can create food and own that food, because GMO food is copywritten, if you understand what I'm saying. It's their food. Like, Monsanto owns the food that they create. So, like I said, zero hunger sound good, but not in the guise of GMO, y'all. Good health and well-being. So it says suggests that global health initiatives are a cover for mass vaccination programs aimed in population control or into introduction of microchips for surveillance purposes. So y'all like, man, this cat out here, man, crazy, man. He sound like conspiracy. But what they're saying is that, I mean, we already have the we won't say it, but we call it Bovid. We had the Bovid 20 already. And they showed you how they was going to implement it through that vaccination. So when you're talking about vaccinations, we're not talking about 1950s like how they used to do it. We're talking about like new age vaccinations where they have a lot of different substances that are electronic in the vaccination. Right? That sound too far fetched, or not? So this is number 4. It's saying quality education. So under the guise of quality education, well, critics argue that the efforts to provide quality education worldwide Of course, it's saying it's a means to indoctrinate children with specific ideologies, eroding national sovereignty and cultural identities. So, I mean, America, they already been doing that to the indigenous and the African indigenous people that were brought over here, and you know what I'm saying? They already did that. They already indoctrinated that program to them, but now they want to take it to the next level. So they want to erode the national sovereignty of the United States, and they want to erode and dissolve cultural identity, so people won't be proud of who they are. Right? This is 2030. It's still on the 2030, y'all. This is day 17 things. Y'all check it out. So it says 5 is gender equality. So some claim that promoting gender equality is an attempt to disrupt traditional value structures and implement radical social engineering agendas. So, all these years, for hundreds of millions of years, it's been male, female. Now they want to do him, her, it, them, they want that. It's confusion, right? They want to say, oh, you can be whatever, but they're using gender equality and using that term to allow people to continue to do this, right? Clean water and sanitation. So the conspiracy theory, like me and others, we have the efforts to ensure clean water and sanitation are a means to privatize water resources, an increase of more multinational corporations over essential natural resources. So of course, big companies, big corporations want to take over resources. They want to own natural resources. Affordable and clean energy. This is the big one, because this is what, like, everybody, this is what President Obama and President Biden and all them talk about: affordable clean energy. I know y'all heard them say that 100 million times. And it says that there are assertions that the push for clean energy is a cover for reducing economic competition by restricting access to affordable energy sources, ultimately benefiting a global elite, right? Usually if somebody's going to consolidate and monopolize, somebody is benefiting from that, right? So it's saying that decent work and economic growth is 8. And critics argue that promoting decent work and economic growth worldwide is a strategy to, once again, homogenize labor laws, practices, potentially leading to the erosion of workers' rights and wages. The industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Some believe the investments in infrastructure and innovation are efforts to create a technocratic, y'all heard that? A technocratic society where technology and surveillance are used to control and monitor populations. So y'all tell me, I mean, it's already coming. Y'all see cameras everywhere now. What they want to do is just, the liberals want to definitely bring that into full bloom. Reduce inequality. So the goal is to reduce inequality. Is seen by some as a strategy to redistribute the wealth in a way that ultimately benefits a small global elite rather than the genuinely addressing disparities. And we've seen this again and again and again and again. We've seen them do this again. So I mean, like, these things are not even like so far-fetched. Sustainable cities and communities. This is going to be interesting. So the theory is that suggesting that efforts to create sustainable cities are part of the plan to concentrate populations in urban areas, making them easier to control and monitor. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. 12, reasonable consumption and production. This is going to be a good one for y'all. This is going to be a good one. It says that critics argue that promoting reasonable consumption is a means to impose strict regulations on individual behavior and consumer choices, leading to decreased personal freedoms. So, like, even with this one, it's like they gonna tell you, oh, you didn't have too much of that. Oh, you didn't have too much uh of this sugar. You didn't have too much of these particular products, right? You've consumed your fair share. So you won't even be able to buy that. Like when you go purchase it, it won't even allow you to purchase it. And all this stuff could be done under the green, like the Green Act, like this whole sustainable living. So it says the climate action. Some claim that the focus of climate action is a pretext to implementing global carbon tax and restrictive environmental policies that stifle economic growth and individual liberty. So I'm not sure, but I know a lot of people heard of carbon taxes, right? Carbon taxes. We have that's been talked about for the past 20 years. So they've been putting this, in your head, but the reality is if the liberals come in, this is the things that would be implemented. They would allow the UN to propose this and take over the United States. So it says that life below water, that's 14. 14, it says the goal to protect marine life is seen by some as an excuse to extend international control over the ocean and marine resources. So that's also limiting the sovereignty. Life on land. So the theory is suggesting that the efforts to protect terrestrial ecosystems are a means to restrict land use and property rights. Again, look at those words. Land to restrict land use and property rights, consolidating control over natural resources. So the government is taking over natural resources. Okay. Your property rights, once again, that term, you're losing your property rights. So it's saying that in number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. So critics would argue that promoting peace and justice is a strategy to create a one world government with centralized legal and judicial systems that override national law. So y'all want to take that in. See how they use these terms to lure us in 2030. Like you guys have no idea. You're so stuck on 2025 that you guys are not looking at what the other hand. You're looking at the left hand so hard, or I would say the right. Y'all looking at the right hand so hard, the right wing, that y'all not looking at the left. Number 17, partnership for the goals. There are claims that fostering global partnership is a way to establish a network of international organizations that ultimately serve the interests of a global elite rather than the common good.